You could be a Nigel Planer impersonator, for all I know.
That's right, exactly.
Oh, there you are. This is great. Thank you so much for agreeing to this. It's a lovely chap called Ben, I believe, on Facebook, organises all your stuff. With Jeremiah Bourne in Time, I remember hearing the Big Finish version. I was quite excited by that. And I heard, oh, wow, you're going to do the book version, which is obviously on Unbound now. So can I ask, what was your inspiration for the book first? And are there any changes from the Big Finish version?
Inspiration actually came for the book first. I wrote 2 drafts of the book before the audio, and they weren't quite right. And then the opportunity to do the audio came along. So the audio's like an adaptation of the original big idea, and then having done that, I went back and did the sort of final draft of the book. And in answer to your second question, yes, there's a lot more in the book than there is in the audio. The audio is just the one strand, because they're the guys, Big Finish are the guys who do a lot of Doctor Who and H.G. Wells. I've done a lot of recording for them in the past. That's how I got to know them. And so they were emphasizing that kind of, they put some kind of space music on it, and they made it that sort of thing. Whereas the book's a bit more expansive, it's a bit more in the realms more of a sort of Terry Pratchett. It spreads a bit more, and there's a lot more characters in the future section of the book. I should explain, the book is set really in 3 different eras in the same place. That feeling when you might maybe see something in the street and it's very ancient, it's a Roman pillar or something, and your imagination sort of takes you back in time. It's that kind of experience. So you are where you are. So you'll travel in time, in this instance, in Jeremiah Bourne's instance, in his house in Blackfriars. So in the opening scene, he goes back to the exact room he's in, but in 1910.
And didn't you do a recent sci-fi thing, which I wish I'd seen now, with Adrian Edmondson, about Volcano?
Yeah, I mean, I did a play with him, which we called Vulcan 7, and we'd had this great poster. But a mistake we made, in a way, was calling it Vulcan 7, because it's not a sci-fi thing. It's about 2 actors stuck in a Winnebago caravan on the side of a volcano, and there's an avalanche, and they're really stuck there. And it has a sort of Waiting for Godot feel almost to it. And the reason it's called Vulcan 7 is that they're both on the set of the 7th in the sort of Marvel type film of Vulcan, the series of Vulcan films. And my character, Hugh Delavoye, plays the butler in all 7 Vulcan films. And Adrian's character, Gary Savage, it initially is a monster. He's dressed as a sci-fi monster. He rips that off because he can't stand the long makeup job. And so it's called Vulcan 7 because they're both working on a film called Vulcan 7. But we've now renamed it. It's heading straight towards us.
I like that.
It's a very funny and touching play as well, actually, because they were at college together and have not seen each other for many years, but they really don't like each other, like a lot. They go through life-threatening situation, stuck on the side of this volcano that's erupting, and it's quite touching. They go through a sort of change, and it would be too much to say it turns into a bromance, but they learn something. They, despite their hatred of each other, they find that they do share a lot in common.
It also sounds like it could be a new The Comic Strip Presents. It has that feel about it. I'm not going to suggest would you do any more, but you and Adrian don't hate each other, do you?
No, not at all. And I'm not allowed to say, but the Comic Strip presents is not dead yet. There are possibilities happening, but that's more to do with Peter Richardson, who's the sort of producer director of the comic strip.
It's a good book about the experiences too, I believe, and I imagine you will definitely be in it because you were a double act with him at the beginning.
Did he? He's written that book, has he?
Well, I've heard rumours that he's writing a book.
Oh, yeah.
He's been saying that.
Interestingly, yeah, because I'm also trying to write about, my memories or my, false memories. Last year, we had 4 big phone conversations during the lockdowns with the specific purpose of trying to remember events.
Yeah.
And it's extraordinary how, particularly with Peter, but anybody's memory is completely different of the same event. There was a real exercise in something, I don't know what, how the memory is so something you really think, yes, no, I know that happened.
Yes.
It's possible to have somebody else's memory. It's possible to amalgamate 2 different scenes together, because you can remember somebody said that and you can remember you went to the mountain.
Yes.
Actually, those 2 things didn't happen at the same time, but in your memory, they got filed in the same thing. And the guy said that on the mountain. And memory is very, very fluid, which brings me back to Jeremiah Bourne, because in the book, that's how they travel in time, is through inherited memory. And there must be some things we genetically that we're programmed for, that we know, that we remember. And if you take that idea a little bit further, you end up, well, in my mind, you end up with time travel through memory. That's how. So it's memory is the way the time travel in my book, Jeremiah Bourne, works.
Like in the Christopher Reeve film, where he thinks himself back.
I don't know that one.
Oh, it's a lovely, heartbreaking film.
Can you remember what it's called?
Oh, is it called Once Upon a Time or something like that? And he sees a picture of a beautiful woman, and he falls in love with her so much that he thinks himself back and back and back, and there he is with her in Victorian times. But I don't want to tell you what happens at the end, but it's heartbreaking. So no spoilers. I was going to say, you were talking about things that you remember, because I've been doing my research, and occasionally we do play music by you. The Neil's Heavy Concept album gets a lot of plays on Common Lovers Guide.
Oh, that's great.
It's been a treat to do, because the production on it is very good, and there's Dawn French, isn't it? And I think Stephen Fry and yourself.
Yeah.
But being on top of the pops, I've noticed if you don't mind me saying so, you're nicely cheeky. You do little references to Paul Weller. You start singing My White Bicycle, which should have been a hit, and everything. And I love the fact, on the comments below, people go, we love the fact that he says something different every time. And it must have been such a thrill to suddenly, you're on top of the pops. Not as you, but as Neil,
Yeah, it was a very good thing, because if you're in character, you don't have to take the consequences of your actions. So you can become a pop star, and all of the disadvantages of that are taken by Neil. And there are disadvantages that you have to. I learned quite a lot about what that industry is like, and how much we see photographs all the time of the pop stars and in the interviews and in the papers, and you don't realize it means I didn't realize it means kind of getting up every day.
Yeah.
Putting on makeup, doing a photo session, doing an interview, being interviewed again, and posing for the next focus. Is all about putting your image out there.
Your face must have hurt, because I was watching. Neil very rarely gets to smile, and his face is constantly pulled down. And that must have been a relief of going 2 series now. I can smile again. Because I've noticed, like he gets to grin occasionally and talk about seeds and have fun. But a lot of the time, everybody else is having lots of, and you're just in the background going.
Even then, when he smiles, Neil,
Yeah.
he does this kind of, well, you can see it on this because we're talking on Skype. He does a sort of, it's a kind of heart, it's a pathetic. He doesn't put his, his full enthusiasm into the smile. It's a kind of half smile.
And you never got to meet Marvin the paranoid android. I suddenly thought two 80s miserable icons, and there was never. Yeah.
Who's that? Marvin the paranoid android? I don't know.
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Oh, right. Yes, of course. Sorry. No,
there was never a duet between the two of you.
Yeah.
With Jeremiah Bourne in Time. I mean, that would be a lovely Netflix series. I mean, obviously, that's one of those things of like, I can imagine it. I know that they always talk about, several series or something. In England, it tends to be two. In America, can we get a ninth or an eighth out of it?
It's envisaged as a trilogy, and there's a bigger story underneath the story of the first book.
Yeah.
I'm trying to, and I think I have successfully laid in the sort of groundings for a longer term story that will come to realization later in book 3, and in book 2, and there are other, I've sowed some seeds that will hopefully come to fruition then. Then it's set in 2019, just before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then it's set in 1910, in London, all in Blackfriars and East London, South East London. But the second book will, again, the future people will be the same, and the 2019, maybe 23, he will have, would be now, sort of thing. But the past, he'll go back further in the past than 1910. I've got a story in mind and a period that I'd really like to write about when London was really changing. And so he'll go back to a different period then. And again, in the third story, change again to another period, keeping the characters from 1910. But once he's worked out how to do it, rather like in Doctor Who, it gets, you'll find he's gone and brought somebody from 1910 back to nowadays, and she has a baby, and then he's taken the people from 1910 by mistake back to somewhere else. In the second book, he'll by mistake take them back to the 17th century, and he makes a lot of mistakes, which ends up being quite fun.
Well, you ended up, you did a live Doctor Who show, which was some time ago. Yeah. And I discovered that all but a few people in the young ones, which I might mention briefly, is some time ago. Alexis Sale was in Doctor Who. So was, I can get his name now. So was Mike.
Chris Ryan, yeah.
And
yes, Adrian played the one with the big neck. Yeah. Did Adrian do it too? What did he do?
He got to be in a Star Wars movie.
Oh, Star Wars, not Doctor Who, though.
No, not yet. So there's still time. And I mean, I could say it's quite sad. Obviously, Rick Mayall passed away. Sorry, but he was offered to be a big villain in Doctor Who in 1993. He was going to be the big villain for a 30th thing that they never did. And this one I think he was also going to be a major character in Harry Potter, but he was too cheeky and subversive and everything. It's always it amazes me to talk about.
What you mean? They cast someone else instead, or what?
They got rid of the character. It was a sprite called Peeves, who's in the book, and he's just a naughty sprite that gets up to no good and says cheeky things. And they immediately thought, oh, we'll get Rick Mayall. And apparently, and this is on YouTube, he chats about it, saying that he went on the sound stage and did all this stuff, and the cast kept giggling and laughing, and they were just like, I'm sorry, you're exactly right, but we can't control the cast because they're juveniles or they're young, but they find you too funny, so we're going to have to cut you out, which is a bit of a shame. So
it's a good anecdote. I wonder. I wonder you know, what other elements came into play there. But yeah. I mean, he was pretty uncontrollable in the play at the National Theatre, and it's a vehicle for a comedy idiot has been given. Suddenly, everybody thinks he's the most important. They mistake him. It's one of those comedy plays.
Yeah.
They mistake this guy who's an idiot for the government inspector who they've all got to behave, and they sort of bestow honours on him, and it's a good comedy play. Alistair McGowan did a version too. Anyway, when Rick did it at the National Theatre, he was, arsing about so much. He did some of his sort of stand-up routines in the middle of it, which didn't kind of fit the play, but the audience are all loving it. But the other actors were having to stand around while he did a gag about taking a bogey out of his nose and then not being able to get it, trying to stick it under a chair and it sticks under the chair, and then he couldn't, a long bogey routine, which is a brilliant routine.
And you did a farce recently. You were going for, I'm going to say traditional comedy. I'm quite a comedy nerd, so I know there's all different types. But your farce, how did that go?
Brilliantly. I mean, it was one of the first, if not the first, play to get up and running and on tour after the lockdown, after the pandemic. I was amazed. There was a unit called the Northern Comedy Theatre.
Yes.
And they do just comedies in plays, and they tour around the north. They're based in Liverpool. And I sent Sean Chambers the script, and it was a script I'd written a while ago, and it is a inverted commas trad farce, in that it's got the setup, and then it all goes mayhem, and people are coming in and out and mistaking each other, and trousers come down and people get locked in cupboards, and it's got all of that. But it was set in a modern setting. So the main guy is a banker. He denies it, but he's a banker who's just got a bonus, and he wants to sort of get some good PR and become a donor so that he can kind of become a politician. And you need a character like that to deflate. And he employs a PR agent, and there's a program going on upstairs, a sort of reality program. There's a guy called Matthew Bourne, who runs a TV reality show. So they bring him downstairs, and gradually the situation gets worse.
My son was lucky enough during lockdown. He's into acting and comedy as well, because I'm about the house and we're sort of going. He'll write a sketch for me or something like that. He gets annoyed because I'll do impressions of people that he doesn't know who they are. I go, well, you're going to have to watch Pete and Doug with me then to know who I'm impersonating, or that kind of thing. But he was in.
Did he then recognise it, or was he saying, "You're a terrible impersonator"?
That's always the way. And my dad used to do an appalling impersonation of Rowan Atkinson, and years later I discovered it was an appalling impersonation of Rowan Atkinson. But when my son, during lockdown, he got to be in one of the only theatres that was open, very briefly, in Ipswich, of all places, doing the Scottish play. And it was, he got to do that. He was about 13 then, and he got to walk on. And it was all different schools doing little bits of Hamlet, and they glued them all together. And it was a bit of a farce, to be honest, because they'd come on and be very quiet, and then my son would come on and be really loud, and then they go back to being quiet again. So, but it was a lovely thing. He wanted to ask you a question. He's at school at the moment, but he was saying he wanted to ask a question, and I don't know if it's an impertinent one, because teenagers tend to ask awkward questions. He said, ask Nigel, because he'd seen some clips, and he said, is comedy very different from when you were doing it? He used that expression, when you were doing it. You're still doing comedy now. I saw you in Mandy by Tangerine.
Do you know, that passed me by? I didn't realise. Yeah, because from when you started doing it would have been a more tactful way of putting that. Yeah,
well, he's 14, not very tactful.
Yeah. Is it different from then? Yeah, it's a lot I mean, I think we did it. We changed the scene quite a lot in terms of making it a bit wilder and ruder and all of that. And Uslot, despite mostly being middle class, were nevertheless not that kind of Oxbridge posh lot. You know, there's one scene that really shows it up. It's the University Challenge scene in the Young Ones, where you've got actual Hugh Laurie, actual Ben Elton, actual Emma Thompson,
all there,
actual Stephen Fry sitting in an actual row, and above them was Uslot, and that's very much what it felt like. But it has changed since then. I think nowadays there's a lot more both comedy and drama. It's people don't mind about being incredibly rude these days. What, you know, rude as in there's a lot of masturbation on television. There's a scene in episode 1 where Neil is contemplating suicide, which of course nowadays that would be cut out. He's upstairs in the room saying, "Oh, I might as well kill myself," and then you cut to the top of a bus and they can see through the window, these two old ladies, and they're nattering to each other. And Pauline Melville, I think it was Pauline Melville and Maggie Steed, and they're looking through the window, and she turns and says, "Oh, what that boy needs is a damn good." That was in episode 1 of The Young Ones, but they bleeped it when they put it out.
Oh, right, I've seen that. And what the boy needs is and it cuts to something else, or you don't hear what
boy needs is a damn good. You know, and that was episode 1. I was pretty shocked when we recorded half these things. I mean, I was pretty shocked in the when we did Bad News.
Yeah, great
that I was allowed. I thought, God, you know, when Johnny Rotten said this F word, the man who interviewed him had to resign. You know, it was that shocking. And it was only like, where were we, 1981? And it was only something like 4 years later, 3 years later even, that I'm on telly going, you know, I'm not joining the band if we're anything to do with the New Romantics.
Yeah.
Not the effing New Romantics. And I'm encouraged. I said it because we were improvising and it was in the script as well. And we, you know, but I thought, God, we'll never. Shall we film a version where I don't say that word, because they'll never allow it on telly? But they did.
Yeah. Were you worried that they wouldn't, that the real bands who would, well, not that you weren't a real band, but you know, like get the joke, that they might get annoyed at you for taking the mickey out of heavy metal?
I mean, far from it. We had when we went on tour, we got them. We had we had international guitar heroes queuing up to come and guest with us. We had at various points. We used to do a routine where we'd have a guitar hero off stage and we'd turn our volume down and they'd play, and then they'd walk out, huge crowd cheer, and Adrian would say, you know, I told you to stay behind the speaker. I gave you a $5 to stay behind the speaker. And then they'd play, then we'd play. But in the course of that tour, we had Jeff Beck come out and do that routine. We had Brian May, of course, come out and do the routine. And we had Jimmy Page.
No.
Yeah. What? Sometimes we had more than one of them on at a time at the marquee. And I think they thought it was a laugh. You know, it was a gas to come out and be funny. I think it's a relief for people to think, hey, I want to join in with this. Yeah. Which Brian, of course, did. Brian May did. He produced our album.
Yeah, it's good fun. Well, like Nicholas Craig as well. You brought him back on his com.
Yeah.
I was just listening to the last episode, and it was funny because he was talking about waiting for the call. And I was thinking exactly the same thing when I was trying to sort out this Skype, going, I've definitely pressed the right button and everything, and there you are. But with that, there are some lovely instances where you in character show up to a real, genuine award ceremony and slightly take the mickey out of the whole room, and all the actors are kind of going, well, that's obviously not, I mean, I'm not like that, but I know people are.
Yeah, it was a bit. It didn't always work there. I saw one the other day, which I've now deleted,
Hmm.
uh, where I went. It was Clive Anderson introduced. It depends how they introduce you. I used to actually stand up at award ceremonies and say some fairly bitchy things in this character, and sometimes once or twice, I think maybe we overstepped it a bit. But what it really mattered was that the host said, "Ladies and gentlemen, and now to give the award away, we have that well-known thespian who's obviously, they have to believe it, they have to take it very seriously, so that then when you walk out and say something like, that's funny, they
Yes.
know they can see that there's a joke going on because you're in the character."
Yeah.
But the one I saw the other day was Clive Anderson somehow hadn't clocked what was going on, or he hadn't looked down the brief. He said, "So now we've got Nigel Planer.
Oh.
It's Nigel Planer who's written a few books, but he had the thing that because Nicholas Craig originally had written a book called I Am Actor, so he
Yeah.
had that. But I'd also written a book at the
Yeah.
time, serious book, amusing, but not a spoof book,
No.
called Good Enough Dad. That
Oh yeah.
was, and so Clive had, I presume, had looked down the list and said, so he's written a couple of books. It's Nigel Planer, and he's going to come on and give the award. And I come on
Yeah.
to deathly silence and say something like, just before we start, I just want to say that the whole idea of celebrity just revolts me. And that I think it's absolutely disgusting that anybody who's even been in a soap opera it should even be considered for an award. And it makes me vomit on my shoes, to be honest. Which is funny if you
Yeah.
know that what I'm doing is being a pompous actor who
Yeah.
looks down on soap opera people. But that's not the way it looks. It looks like this stuck-up actor comes out, and it fell on total silence,
Oh.
and people are thinking, "God, what a horrible man!"
Yeah. You're going, this is not really me. It's the character saying that. So
I
what's
know.
people like that?
Oh God, yes, I get that. I understand the joke.
Well, I was talking to Graham Fellows, aka Jilted John, and John Shuttleworth, and
Oh,
he's a lovely chap to talk to, and he went bananas. I didn't know he was going to be so interested in an interview with me. Halfway through the interview, he started saying, "Here's free tickets, here's the album," and he bought me a drink. He went crazy, and I was like, "Okay, that's very kind and everything." But I think it's because I said that he upstaged Steve Coogan in Coogan's Run, which is true. But I was thinking about, he was like, "That's a bit obscure. No one remembers that." I remember that. And we were talking about, we did talk about Filthy Rich and Catflap.
oh yeah, yeah.
And how, and a lot of the time, I'm not going to say you were typecast as Neil because you weren't, because you did loads of different things, but that's never Neil. That's never the same guy.
And well, Neil came from about 1975,
Oh,
his first
okay.
appearance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it gave it a sort of feeling of that it had a character all its own, and it was coming from somewhere, that it wasn't a television creation. It was a creation that had been televised.
So yourself, I saw something about. Now I'm worried I'm going to put my foot in it now, about the She Devil, the musical. Now is
Yeah.
that is happening, or that was one of those things of, I saw it online, did my research, went, that's interesting, but I don't know whether that is still a thing.
It's still a thing. We haven't. The trouble is, the pandemic came. The same with the play I did with Adrian. We did another reading of the play with Adrian the day before the lockdowns, and we were about to bring that play, not with Adrian and me playing the roles. It was gonna be Samuel West and Tony Gardner playing our roles. It was going to go into a theatre in the West End, but then the pandemic happened, and it all slows down. And She Devil likewise, I've been working on it for some years. It's based on the Fay Weldon book, Life and Loves of a She Devil. We've modernized it. We brought it up to now. So the successful woman, Mary Fisher, the novelist in the original, is now a sort of influencer. They're all worrying about how many you know, how many followers she has, how many pings, how many likes, and all of that. And Ruth, it's the same story, but it's very much set nowadays. And I've written the script and a few of the lyrics, but basically I'm the book writer. Hannah Jane Fox and Andrew Holsworth have written the music and the lyrics, and we did a workshop of it. I mean, we've done several workshops of it, where, because with the music it is such a long process of refining it and cutting a number, putting another one in. Even the big shows, if you read about it, you know, even Stephen Sondheim's changing saying, oh, this song doesn't work there, we'll move it. Something like Chicago,
yes,
that I was in for a year and a half, in that first London production of it. The songs in that are absolutely brilliant, and the stories funny. Candor and Ebb, in my opinion, are the sort of top of the tree when it comes to it. It's funny and it's hard, and you know, it's not. The thing I can't stand is those musicals where it's difficult to describe, but you hear the same key change in that first song and you think, oh, this is a musical, isn't it? And it's going to be all sort of flowery and soft and annoying. I mean, some musicals, Hairspray, another one I was in, that's not soft and flowery. That's absolutely flawlessly brilliant. It's funny. It's exciting. Wicked is actually brilliant. It's not the sort of thing I would normally have gone to, I don't think. But it works. It's and some of the songs are a bit sentimental, a bit, you know, tear jerky, but you know, that's not my personal taste. But you have to appreciate it. It's absolutely brilliant.
Musically, who would you say, when you were, you know, who do you rate, if you would like, if you
do you mean in musical theatre, or do you mean in music?
Oh, a bit of both. You know, they're two very different things sometimes.
Well, they are very different. Musical theatre, as I say, I think Candor and Ebb are brilliant. They did Kiss of the Spider Woman. They did Chicago. They didn't they do Cabaret?
I think that's them.
Cabaret too. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't get better than them. I do like Sondheim. I think he's brilliant, but it can get a bit complex for easy listening. Mark and Scott, who did Hairspray, I mean, Hairspray's, there isn't a person who couldn't enjoy that, if you ask me. It's just exhilarating, Hairspray. Stephen Schwartz is good, the Wicked, and even Rocky Horror Show, which I've been in. If you listen to the songs of that, and the whole show, the structure of it, everything, it works. It doesn't let you down. There's a sad bit at the end, which you're sort of not really feeling sad, because he is an alien. But you know, when he says "we're going home," the tunes are so good.
I used to sing the Frankenstein song and "Going Home" to my son when he was little, as a go to sleep song. I didn't sing the other ones because they're more provocative, but I do used to sing the nice.
So you sing "I'm a sweet transvestite from Transylvania." No. You're a little baby.
There's more time, plenty of time to sing that song. You know,
but my taste in music is a bit different. If I had to just listen to music, I would be listening to more minimalist things. I would be listening to Miles Davis and Philip Glass and John Adams and stranger sort of things like that. John McLaughlin's "My Gold's Beyond" I was listening to again the other day, and so sort of minimalist stuff, or pop songs, nice pop songs, you know, as well.
Different to you be listening to Philip Glass or something, say Michael Nyman or something like that, and then you're off to go and do like a comedy thing, and then you come back and it's jazz and seriousness. And I'm always asked, like, you know, I do lots of comedy sci-fi serials on my show and my sketches, and people assume that you're flippant and that you don't care because you do comedy.
Yeah, I mean, some people, that's me. I'm like that you just described. But some comics do need to keep it light at all times and want to sort of undermine and to, you know, they're always, we used to call it comics disease, you know, where they come off stage and they still want to tell jokes. They still want to be the center of it. They can't stop telling jokes and being entertaining and putting on voices. And I call that comics disease, because I feel, well, I haven't got a life then if I'm going to be, you know, you don't want to be doing that. I want a life as well. I've got all sorts of other things going on.
It is quite tricky to suddenly go, right, I'm going to be, you know, I've gone on stage, I've done some stand-up, done some characters, all the improv, the stuff I used to do, and you go off stage, and then, you know, I got that thing where I'd still be on, and people would just say, "Shut up," and I'm sorry. Like suddenly,
it is comics disease. Yeah,
I had that. I think I get that.
The person I knew who had the worst dose of it was Robin Williams.
I was about to say, yeah.
Who used to come and play at the Comedy Store and the comic strip.
Oh wow.
We got to know him a bit, and he could do a long set. You know, you just go on. He wouldn't know when to stop. But then he'd come off. He'd be sitting in the corridor, and he'd still be going, "Oh, a funny voice, funny voice, yeah, blah blah. You know, what kind of taxi? Do you want us to get you a taxi? Oh, a taxi, blah blah blah." It just never stopped, and I would find that, you know, it must be hard to live with that.
When I was mentioning Graham Fellows, where he said there's an overlap where he would write a song as John Shuttleworth, and then it would turn into a Graham song. And you wrote some songs, or found some old songs that were from you that weren't.
That's right. Yeah, I did do that during the lockdown. I started to remember, talking about memory again.
Yeah.
I started to remember all the songs I wrote when I must have been 19. And I took myself very seriously and wrote these kind of folk jazz songs, sort of after Nick Drake, really, that kind of thing. And I put them together with a guy called Chris Wade. I remembered them. I got out my old broken guitar and remembered all these words came back to me. Oh God, that's what I used to sing, and this is how I used to play it. Because we're in lockdown, you can't go out.
No.
And Chris Wade's in Leeds. He puts a lot out on Bandcamp as an act called Dodson and Fogg. He's made about 5 albums, and we found we had a sort of sympathetic style to each other. He's got a deeper singing voice, and he can do the nice acoustic lead breaks, and I could do the strummy bits, and so we were sending files back and forward, and we made 5 songs, and we called it 5 Songs Left, after Nick Drake's 5 Leaves Left. And we put that out on Bandcamp, and it did really well, got a lot of attention. So I then thought, oh, there was more. There were 4. We didn't do that, and I remembered 4 more. So we did 4 songs more. And at the moment, we're meant to be, although things have started to happen again now, haven't they? Everyone's busy again now, so we don't have all this time. But there's 2 songs that I'd forgotten, so we're going to put those out eventually, called 2 Songs Forgotten. And I think that's the lot. So it's something like 11 songs I remembered from when I was 19, because I used to take that so seriously, writing these songs. They're like sort of teenage hippie poetry with music. You know, they're quite hallucinogenic. It's kind of what you call psych folk, meaning folk music that's taken a bit of acid. You know, it's kind of the style they're in.
I'm concerned. Is that how you broke the guitar? Or...
No, actually, the guitar got broken in a show. I used it in a comedy thing, and it got thrown on the floor, as guitars tend to in comedy, and it's still got that crack. You've got to sort of hold it together with your elbow.
Good name for an album. So yes.
By yeah.
I was going to say, if you just brought the memories back, because I remember seeing it's on my comic strip box set, and I was showing my wife, saying, "You've got to watch this." And we watched Spaghetti Hoops, and we watched what's the other black and white one? That's
Beat Generation.
That one. And
yeah.
Sitting there, and you and your banana, and everything. And it's that thing of like, these almost feel like, I know nowadays people treat, I think they always did, treat comedy a bit like a business. They're always trying to sell something to Amazon, his series to Amazon or Netflix. Everything seems to be a pilot for everything. You know, like this could be another hit. And you watch the comic strip and I go, well, what happens to the characters next? You know, Dawn French shows up with a leg missing. The only leg we were interested in, you know, and that sort of stuff. And each one, I just think, oh, what happens? Oh, you don't, not frustrated so much as I spent half an hour with the guy in Spaghetti Hoops, and then obviously something happened, you know.
Yeah.
It
had its disadvantages. It means that it's never been a commercial entity, so our overseas sales have not been as good as they could have been.
Yeah.
You know, but I was in the double act with Peter when we came up with this insistence that it should be a different story each week. You know, that we wanted to do character work and we wanted to make little mini films, and he's kind of stuck to that, and that's its USP in a way, isn't it? That it doesn't, it's not like an ongoing series. It's more like a rep company doing different comedy film every time.
Tuning into the comic strip when I was a teenager, you never knew what you were going to get. You might see the title, and you go.
Some of them are a bit crap, though, aren't they? That's the only trouble.
Oh, I did like that.
It doesn't always pay dividends, but never mind.
I'm very forgiving, I think, because humor is so varied and so different. You know, this one is going to be more of a laid back one, or you know,
I do like those two black and white ones, though. They're two of my favorites.